EPRA, and this is an EPRA profile. We're profiling today a company that I first met when I walked into a substation in Austin, Texas, and saw a piece of equipment, a box that said dynamic ratings. And I thought to myself, I wonder what they do. And so when I was told what dynamic rating does, I thought that's pretty cool. And our guest today is Tony Pink, who was the founder of Dynamic Ratings back in 2002, right, Tony?
That's right.
Yeah. What I really liked about your background, though, is you started part-time in college in your basement with your neighbor, your wife, right, and yourself making control panels or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were actually doing switchgear, which is now last I knew was still in service in the Philippines for the two largest skyscrapers in the Philippines.
Are you
So,
serious? That's pretty
yes.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. So, see, you have that entrepreneur spirit, which means you are probably a serial entrepreneur. Dynamic Ratings, you started it, it grew, and then I know you have a relationship with Wilson. Talk a little bit about that.
Actually, so as I got into the industry, I was working at SPX Transformer. At the time, it was Waukesha Electric,
Yeah.
and Waukesha Electric had some relationship with Wilson Transformer in Australia,
Yeah.
and Wilson had presented this monitoring platform, asked them if they wanted to brand label it. And unfortunately, that was right about the time 9/11 occurred. Things didn't come together, and I ended up contacting Wilson and said, hey, why don't you hire me and I'll just start a business for you, because I think this product has an awful lot of promise in North America. So they agreed, and Dynamic Ratings was founded in early 2002.
Excellent. And now you you're the COO of global operations for Dynamic Ratings, correct?
Correct. So I still have the office in Australia, and we have an office in the UK, and then a sales office in Singapore.
Okay. Did you travel a lot or used to travel a lot to those places?
All the way up until Corona kind of stopped all of that.
Yeah, well, see, hopefully 10 years from now, when this plays again and you and I are old men, people will say, what's Corona? Hopefully, maybe next year we'll do that, right? Something along those lines. I know you're also on the IEEE C57-143 committee. You're the secretary of that committee, right?
Correct. So I was the secretary for the first edition when that was published. And now they're actually in the revision process. So I've kind of handed the baton on to the next generation to make the next round of revisions.
Okay, the next generation. We're going to talk about that as the next generation. So tell me a little bit about what Dynamic Ratings actually does. What is the value to someone using Dynamic Ratings, the products, the services?
Our main mission is to help asset managers of power equipment make sure that they're maintaining reliability, increasing safety, and essentially providing a positive ROI to their organization. And the products and services that we provide include monitoring of everything from motors and generators, isophase bus, transformers, and high voltage circuit breakers.
Wow. The whole world, we're going to get into a little bit more about this when we talk about product quality and innovation. But if there is one buzzword out there in the world of reliability, because I'm a reliability guy, not an electric guy, then I became a transformer guy, and then you put transformers and reliability together, and now I'm an electric power reliability guy. But monitoring, it's the buzzword. Everything's being monitored. Just talk a little bit about that journey that you've seen, because you were monitoring before monitoring was sexy.
Yeah, I think we were one of the pioneers. When I was working at the transformer factory, one of the challenges that I encountered was asset managers would write into their transformer specification that they want to install a particular monitor because they had a sales guy that came in and convinced them that, wow, this is going to be easy. All I got to do is write this in my spec. And then I would follow up at a later point and find out, hey, how well is that thing working for you? And inevitably, it was extremely rare that a customer was actually getting the benefit from the product.
Yeah.
So what I quickly recognized is success in monitoring, obviously you have to have a good product, but the complications of trying to implement it, especially within a utility environment, becomes very challenging because you have all the IT issues, the communication, training. So when Dynamic Ratings got founded, our whole premise was we need to make sure that the customer is actually going to get the benefit from the monitoring that they're deploying.
And that was it, that you benefit from
That's
monitoring. And you know what, Tony? Today, that is still the problem. I have people say, why did you put that monitor on that transformer? And you know what the answer is? Because it was spec'd. I mean, we have and this is public, so I can mention it. There's a company, Gerdau, and we were working with them on their furnace transformers to develop a really good reliability program for them. And someone in purchasing ordered 32 GE 8-gas monitors, right? And then someone in operations said, well, you have to put them on these transformers. And someone in the electrical reliability world said, well, why did you order those? And what are we supposed to do with them? Now, fortunately, the story turned out really, really good in the fact that a company, ST Myers, one of our resource practitioners, actually monitors those 32 Kelman monitors as the data comes in, so that when there is an alarm, there's an engineer that can say, hey, there's an alarm, but it's not a problem, or there's an alarm, run, or let's talk about what we're going to do. So we've actually done a forum, and it's a panel discussion. We talked about that, but that's one of the big issues. And we're going to talk more about use of monitoring and getting the most value out of it. I want to switch when we formed EPRA, one of the things I wanted to do is when we brought in what we call resource practitioners like Dynamic Ratings, was we kind of said, we want a no sales zone. Now, you know, obviously to be successful, you've got to sell products, companies have to sell services, but we really said, we want to bring in the companies that have a commitment to education at a higher level. We want them to be able to have certain principles, if you will. And somebody said, well, what do you think they would be? And I wrote down 7 fundamentals of EPRA. Now, since I wrote it down, it's now in stone, and people are afraid to change it. And actually, when I look back at them, they're pretty good. And I want to walk you through those because it's very important when we look at what you're sharing. The why is as important as the what. And we are very selective. We don't just, put companies up here. We've got DuPont's Nomex. I happen to believe wholeheartedly in Nomex. I think it's a great product. I think it's going to be revolutionary as people get over the price. FR3, we had a whole thing on using natural esters, and Midel and Cargill and others are involved in that. But I think natural esters are a huge step forward for the industry. So what we're trying to do is bring companies that we think make a difference. And we believe that Dynamic Ratings is one of those companies. Here are the 7 fundamentals that to our viewers, it's not like we didn't give these in advance to Tony, but I do have some curves for you, my friend. So don't think you could just say, oh, Alan's going to ask me these things. But in reality is if your 7 fundamentals line up with our 7 fundamentals, we want to promote what you do to a much larger audience, because we think that's what the marketplace is looking for. 75%, this was a statistic from about 3 weeks ago because it's now old, but 75% of buyers do online research about the company, the product and service before they ever talk to a salesperson, before they ever make a buying decision. Consequently, we want to get there with this kind of knowledge so that buyers and planners and engineers can look at it and in a safe environment say, well, I want to find out about that company, about the people at that company, and nobody represents that dynamic ratings better than you, Tony. So first question is, we're a reliability organization, the Reliability Alliance, and we have a real commitment to reliability as it's tied to safety. It's two sides of the same coin. We have statistically proven, I say we, a gentleman named Ron Moore, who's one of our fellows, has proven that a reliable plant based on OEE, the operating effectiveness of the equipment, or the AU, the asset utilization, which is how reliability people measure how effective a plant is reliably. The higher those are, the lower the OSHA rate, the lower the fatality rate, the lower everything. So we do have a direct correlation between reliability and safety. Talk to me a little bit about how dynamic ratings fits into that in terms of your perception of reliability and safety.
Sure. Probably the biggest thing from our perspective on the safety side that we didn't anticipate when we first started is the importance of knowing what you're walking into before you walk into it.
Yeah.
Specifically, for example, at utilities, part of the reason why they're doing monitoring on the asset is not just to identify when there's a problem, but to be able to get enough information to get a first level diagnosis so that when the alarm comes in, they know before they go, is this a cooling system problem? Do I need to take a fan? Has the contactor failed? Is it, a nitrogen bottle that's low? Or is the transformer gassing, or is the circuit breaker, not operating properly? All of that information is going to enable them to, first of all, send the right resource and have them prepared for it. From our perspective, one of the big risks that you have when you are walking into an energized substation, if you don't know the situation of what you're walking into, you really are encountering some unnecessary risk. Whereas if you know what the situation is, first of all, you got the right resource, you got the right tool, you're actually going to save time because you can fix it in one trip instead of having to do diagnosis and come back a second time.
Yeah.
So certainly more information is not only safer, it actually saves you money.
You've just described a lot of why we think the reliable and the safe are connected. Information before you go in. OSHA statistics show that for electrical system critical events, they would be break fix types events. There's 10 times more likely to be a fatality in the electrical systems than there is in the mechanical systems. 10 times more. And there isn't a CEO on the earth that won't spend money on safety, right? That's like the big buzzword right now. And what we're trying to do is to say, if you want to spend money on safety, spend it on reliability. Make your system more reliable. And your system includes the people, the people and the knowledge and all of that. So that's why we like dynamic ratings. That's why what you guys do ties very well to it. I want to talk about we have a vision at EPRA, and it really is a vision greater than safety. It is more than that. Reliability also saves money. Sometimes you have to invest in it, but at the end of the day, it may not give an ROI, but it certainly gives an ROSA, a return on safety and assets. So the big thing right now is asset management. Talk to me a little bit about the vision, mission of dynamic ratings as it relates to that.
Well, our primary vision is making sure that customer asset management programs are successful. And to be quite honest, one of our biggest challenges in achieving that goal is trying to educate, especially industrial customers, on what are the different tools and techniques that are used in the industry, or at least available to them in the industry. And I think one of the big synergies between dynamic ratings and EPRA is you guys give us a platform to be able to reach that industrial market that otherwise would be really challenging for us to try to get the message out.
Excellent, because that is what we're trying to do. I can say this, you can't, but a lot of that market is ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant because they just don't know. because, you know, they're all about the production. They don't make electricity. They make things using electricity, right? So it's the redheaded stepchild that's behind the fence, and you go, well, it's never been a problem for 38 years. Why are you asking for money now? So what we try to do is to try to tie. That's a great tie-in. Um, Everybody talks about quality. Nobody says, "Oh yeah, we're not a." The two things. Yes, we're a quality company, and we speak with integrity. Like nobody else is going to say that, you know. But you do have you have a reputation and a history, especially in the utility world, for quality. And that is another thing that needs to happen, because most everybody that we deal with are ISO 9000, 13,000. There's some form of ISO quality rating, right? Because that's now the standard. Well, then the services and the tools that you use to keep your electrical equipment working and reliable also need to be quality. And that kind of goes hand in hand. So talk to me a little bit about your commitment to quality.
Actually, I've got a great illustration.
There's something.
Yeah, I got a great illustration of this one. And this is one of my frustrations. And I noticed this even before we started dynamic ratings. You know, you'd be at an industry event, and you'd have someone presenting a graph that shows here's the monitor that we deployed, and here's the data that it collected, and it shows this hockey stick type graph that you know, shows obviously the equipment starting to go into a runaway condition. And the engineer will point at the data and proudly say, and right here is where the equipment completely failed. And I'm just shaking my head. I'm saying, you know, no, your process failed way before that, because if you installed the equipment and you got the proper alarm threshold set and the data is going back so that people are seeing it and people know what to do when the data comes in, the equipment should have never failed. You need to be able to have all of those elements to truly have a quality asset management system.
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of the vision of recognizing where's dynamic ratings role in this. Yes, you know, we make monitoring products, but to be quite honest, if a customer comes to us and says, hey, I want to use a different brand of product, I just want you guys to help me make sure that I'm successful in deploying it, we're commissioning all kinds of different brands of equipment and helping integrate those things into a utility's asset management program and helping them achieve success. So yeah, just because you got a good monitor that's collecting data, that's only one piece of the puzzle. If you really want a quality management, asset management program, you got to have all of the bases covered to make sure that you're actually reacting to it and getting the benefit.
I love that. That is, the system has to be quality. It's not a product thing. It's not a, hey, we build it right. If the system is not a quality system, any weak point in that system fails the whole thing. And it may be a cable that fails. It may be a breaker. It may be a transformer. But in truth, the system failed you long before. I really like that. We're going to talk about that at one of our panels coming up. We actually have a forums that we're going to do with the utility industry. And we've got Alabama Power, First Energy, Randy Cox from GE. I'd love for you to be on that panel, because we're going to talk about the whole idea of how has COVID affected utilities in how they're using their monitoring. Because I think it's fast forwarding. That's one of the things that we heard is, had we done what we are planning on doing over the next 5 years, now we would be in a lot better shape during COVID, because you got people that are, you know, suddenly you got half your staff in quarantine because somebody sneezed, right? And you don't have the same people. And 10 guys said, I'm done with this, and they retired, right? And so you don't have those guys anymore. And you got some contractors who were allowed in who are not allowed in anymore. And it's just this, they're dealing with a lot of things that are very unique because of the COVID. And maybe 10 years from now, they'll go, COVID? Corona? Not sure. Let's talk about continuous improvement. Your continuous improvement can be both of the products themselves, But your biggest continuous improvement has been the ability to go beyond the products and actually go in and help the, I'm going to say, program. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I think differentiates dynamic ratings is a document that we collaboratively develop for each of our key customers, and it's called a CRD, or a customer requirements document.
Yeah.
And the beginning of that document, we define what are the goals that particular customer has established, and how are they going to measure those goals. And then we look at, in order to achieve those goals, what information needs to be delivered to what people in order for them to be able to react and provide the performance that's needed to be successful.
Yeah.
And then we quite often will have routine meetings. Some of our customers will have either weekly, every other week, or maybe once a month or quarterly, depending on how many assets they have. And we'll review, what are your KPIs? How well are you achieving your defined goals? And then what are the experiences that we've had? And are there ways that we can further improve it? And it may end up resulting in revisions to the way they're specifying products or services, or the way that they're conducting maintenance. And all of that ends up then feeding back into a continuous improvement process that helps them achieve better and better performance on the asset management and reliability side.
Well, that's a good way to say continuous improvement. That is a significant leap from where you were when you started the business in 2002, I would guess. Also a significant challenge, because to do what you're talking about, you've got to start having some of this. I'm going to lump two things together. The idea that, and uh, I don't know you personally. I mean, we haven't sat down and sat over a cup of coffee or something else, a libation, and had some discussions about it. But just your history, you're a lifelong learner. You're continuously learning, and I assume, build that into the company. With that, we have to be lifelong learners if we're going to teach the next generation. So tie the two of those together for me, because I may turn them into one fundamental. Then I'll only have six, and it won't be magic anymore. But lifelong learning, generational transformation.
Well, we certainly recognize that we have to be continually improving and continually learning from the experience as we're deploying new products and new technologies. Quite often we're sharing this. First of all, we host a lot of educational webinars. As a matter of fact, a lot of them we issue professional development hours. So those people that are, accredited with PE can take advantage of that. We also do a couple of user group meetings every year. The user group meetings have a couple of different elements. One of them is for us to provide training to the customers. But the one thing I've gotten as the most effective benefit from attending the user group meetings is when we do a closed door session, no vendors in the room. It's just customers comparing success and challenge stories. And they're going to feel free to talk bad about any supplier in the industry, because there's no vendors in the room, and they can all share those war stories. And then inevitably, we get the opportunity to eventually learn from either our mistakes or our, other, vendors in the industry, what things they've done, and avoid those same problems. So certainly the user group meetings are a great way to share information. And there's a lot of other stuff that we also participate in, but to be quite honest, on the power asset management side, the majority of the events are really focused on the utility industry. And I
Right.
think there's a great niche that EPRA fills in, which kind of brings all of this new technology and new advances and makes it available to to routine industry, so the industry gets the same access to information as what the utilities would have. So I got to thank you and the other folks there at the EPRA organization for being able to be that facilitator of sharing information.
Thank you. It is our passion. I mean, I was asked, I retired, and my boss, who's currently my boss, we're a nonprofit, but somebody had to pay the bill for the first couple of years. And he said, "So what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to waste the last 15 years of my life that I was learning about electrical systems and industrial and commercial. I'd like to do this thing called EPRA." Just a little aside, we talk about industrial, but EPRA's fastest growing area is commercial data centers. In fact, we have two little companies that just joined us recently. One of them was Google. They're having to put an asset management program to create reliability of their electrical systems for their data centers. And the other little company is called Facebook. And the head of reliability for Facebook, all reliability for Facebook, is an EPRA a fan. And when he got that job, he said, "I got to go now look for electrical reliability people. I don't even know who they are within my own organization." And then we also have CBRE, who manages over 850 data centers around the world. And they're all moving from redundancy to reliability. So that's a great market for all of us, because they're now asking the questions: how do I monitor? How do I become more reliable? They're not allowed just to spend money. Hey, I got 4 transformers, I'm redundant, right? Now it's be reliable, and it's really kind of neat that we've seen that fast growing part of our organization, faster than I thought. Anyway, I want to talk about generational transformation. You and I, well, I'm actually a lot older than you, but we got to be teaching that next generation, and they're different. They learn differently. They want things faster than we want. You know, we were patient. Maybe you weren't, because you're an entrepreneur, but typically they want something. Talk a little bit about how you and Dynamic Ratings is approaching this whole generational transition of the people you're hiring to run your company someday.
Sure. I guess one thing that I recognize is if we do want to continually make further improvements in our mission of making asset management more successful, we got to be attracting, the brightest minds coming out of colleges. And one of the challenges is, even within the engineering curriculum, it's a real challenge to get an electrical engineer to go the power route as opposed to go the electronics route.
Right.
It's probably because, they grew up with, handheld electronics, and they're very familiar with all that stuff, and Silicon Valley sounds very sexy and all. But we've been investing in that in a couple of different ways. One is we have interns every year, multiple interns every year, in order to give them exposure to what the careers are in the power industry, give them exposure and understanding, and make them feel comfortable that, hey, this actually is a very interesting niche to be in. I think we've opened a lot of eyes through that program. We also participate in an international educational exchange program. Just this past year, we had somebody who was awarded a international exchange award from the University of Queensland in Australia. With that award, so the university does the screening, they select one winner. That winner then relocated here and spent a year working for us, learning about asset management and reliability programs, and then now has relocated back to Australia and is actually currently in a role working within the asset management group at one of the largest utilities there in Australia. So that certainly was a great success from our perspective. And then the third item is, I'm also active directly with the university. So I'm currently on the industry advisory board for Marquette's electrical engineering and computer science program. So as a member of the advisory board, it gives me an opportunity to give the university some visibility as to what skills are needed within the industry, and how they can best prepare students to come into the power power industry and actually have a positive impact.
That's excellent. We need to hook them up with our, we do have an academic tranche, and it's headed up by Shannon Strank of the University of Texas at Austin. The Center for Electromechanical Research, Dr. Bob Hebner, who's a friend and colleague, and she is his assistant. She heads up that tranche. So we're trying to bring more exposure to universities that are in, the EE, the power program, to say, hey, yeah, it's not electron. They do think, the EEs all think it's really, really sexy to mess with the electronics. But I got to tell you, messing with high voltage and bringing it down to an outlet, that's really the sexiest part of this thing, right? We got to recruit more in. Lastly, I have a belief that stewardship is what we do here. And obviously, your life is a life of stewardship. You've done a great job stewarding dynamic ratings and where they are and what they're doing and where their future. Legacy is what happens after we no longer steward it. What's your legacy when you give a vision of your legacy for dynamic ratings? What is it?
I think our legacy ideally is going to be customers sitting around and sharing stories of how they've been successful in deploying asset monitoring programs and improving reliability and improving safety and reducing the overall cost of power delivery or use of power within their own facilities. And if we can get customers that are all agreeing that, hey, this is the company that really helped us achieve success, whether it be success as a company or success personally based on their role, that to me is what defines success for us as a business.
That is excellent. Thank you so much. All of the things that you've discussed, we will discuss again. In fact, one of the things I want to do is I want to take your interview. You actually answered some of these questions that we're going to publish that as a written interview in Transformer Technology, because I thought the answers were, you actually did a better job here, but those are great answers. We'll use them. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your commitment to the industry as a whole, both the utility end of it. We do also have a utility tranche that we just haven't started yet because it could overwhelm us. And we want to make sure we want to be faithful to our mission and vision, which is electric power reliability in the industrial, commercial, and grid edge markets. And that's where it crosses over into utilities. But our guest today has been Tony Pink. Tony is the COO, founder of Dynamic Ratings. And thank you so much, Tony. This has been a delight.
Thank you very much, Alan.